right direction, that when paired with policy changes, lifestyle choices, and just general consumer demand, as we're increasingly seeing, these could foreshadow what's to come in terms of food sustainability around the world. Again, these depend on many techniques and innovations. Water collection is one. Humidity and temperature control are others. The upcycling of waste is very, very important. Food miles and transportation are also very important. Just food waste in general from cities can instead of being destroyed, can be converted into other forms of protein production, such as insects. It can be upcycled again into agriculture systems. So there's a multitude of techniques and innovations that, when come together, they look more natural than artificial, really, but it really could completely change the way we look at agriculture. And that's what JustLearn focuses on. At JustLearn, starting with PlanetBox, but moving into modules that attach to PlanetBox, such as solar panels and microcomputers, and along with all the resources we're developing, such as curriculum and application, video tutorials and lesson planning, as well as alignment to the existing pedagogy that schools require. What we're trying to do is we're trying to expose the upcoming generation of students to really equip them with these solutions, even if still not fully viable, at least as a glimpse of utopia, if you will, of what's possible with food sustainability and environmental sustainability as a whole. And that's really why I started with education. It's not so much to fundamentally change agriculture, but to bring the latest and greatest as educational tools for the upcoming generation to start thinking about it.
Great answer. This is Sekou Radio, Southwest Florida. If you're just joining us, today our great guest is JIMO Serodio, entrepreneur, University of Tampa. JIMO, Mozambique has one of the biggest dam water retention in the world, and they sell electricity to South Africa, I believe. Would this development of this dam, would this contribute to the improvement of agriculture in Mozambique?
It's a very interesting question, Sekou. I can't go back into the political or international governance of this energy deal. I can summarize it in that Mozambique has a huge dam. It produces electricity, which is sold to South Africa. But I think it opens a can of worms in that dams are considered renewable energy. And they, in fact, are, because, so long as it rains, these rivers will flood, and that water can be, that potential energy, that gravitational energy can be used to run turbines, which effectively is a renewable source of energy. But, the elephant in the room, as I see it, is that one is disturbing completely these natural habitats, these natural ecosystems. So, by trapping the flow of a river, you're separating, the ecology upstream of that dam, downstream of that dam. You're creating a barrier for a lot of species that, now are limited by a wall. And, if we rely only on dams for renewable source of energy, hydroelectricity, I think we could further disturb ecosystems. And if you compare it to other trends in energy production, as I mentioned earlier, solar being, potentially with most attention along with wind turbines, but potentially these longer-term innovations such as nuclear, I think one is able to have potentially a smaller footprint for energy production, but also be more isolated from natural habitats and have less consequences for that reason.
But don't you think hydro dam is better than nuclear power?
I don't. I think that nuclear has a negative connotation to it because it is associated to weapons and destruction, which is true. Effectively from a physics standpoint, there's radiation and that's what happens. But there is not enough information, amongst the general, audience to understand the positive advantages of nuclear. There are many techniques such as the molten salt reactor and fusion, for example, that would have no danger or risk to humanity. Yes, we've experienced, for example, Fukushima and a few other situations where nuclear was a catastrophe. But those were engineering and design problems that have solutions to them. And if done appropriately, nuclear can offer, some of the best energy outputs per environmental footprint, better even than solar panels, for example. In fact, the sun is nuclear, it's fusion, and we are collecting just a fraction of its energy output through solar. I believe that, the principles of physics have shown us that fusion is the most efficient way to produce energy. And it's just a matter of time before we harvest it in a sustainable way, in a safe manner. So I tend to believe that nuclear has a lot of upside. And comparing it to dams, for example, I see the destruction that dams can have on ecosystems, and I'd like to believe that if done properly, fusion can be a better alternative. That's not to say that in the meantime, until nuclear is made commercially available and viable, that we should not continue moving forward with wind and solar. Those are very renewable. The carbon life cycle of wind turbines is improving decade after decade, and now it really is net negative in how it costs less carbon in the atmosphere to produce this energy in the life cycle of this technology. So we should continue to develop, continue to reduce its cost, which will unlock new frontiers with agriculture and other environmental engineering solutions.
Great answer. Some people will said, with the experience of Chernobyl, the explosion of Ukraine nuclear power, Germany went out of nuclear power race, and with Fukushima Daiichi in Japan, now Japanese also are thinking going natural energy. So also, how are we going to storage the waste of the nuclear energy? There's not enough innovation to storage the waste. And that could easily go into running water or fresh water. So don't you think nuclear energy is not a good option in the future?
Those are certainly scenarios where it can end as a catastrophe, Sekou. But as I mentioned earlier, these are fundamental engineering flaws that allowed for these accidents and events to happen. As we speak, there are a lot of innovations in the horizon that are taking place with nuclear. In fission, for example, we have the molten salt reactor and using other elements such as thorium, which allow for very controlled radioactive environments with no risk of explosion. And so long as these are fully contained, then there's also no risk of spillage or waste into the environment. Because of the negative consequences of engineering flaws in the past, policy has been implemented in such a way that nuclear is now, bottlenecked in terms of innovation. But it should not be completely eliminated from, the arsenal of sustainable energy solutions we could have for our future. With fusion, there's even more potential there, just because it produces a lot more energy. And in fact, it doesn't have a risk of explosion because it needs to be a controlled explosion for one to be able to harness the energy. And if it's not controlled, it will simply extinguish and not even produce any radioactive waste or explosion. So I do see nuclear as having tremendous upside and a lot of opportunity. It is a very slow-moving innovation for the next, decade or 2 or 3 decades. And in the meantime, solar and wind are definitely, the choices we should be focusing on.
Okay. Mozambique, where is Mozambique on terms of agriculture? What would be the number one crop cultivated in Mozambique?
It's changed over time Today we have a lot of sugar cane. We have quite a bit of cotton as well as soybeans. We have banana plantations, but it's changed. We also have tea, and we've had tobacco in the past. We're starting to have coffee. Mozambique internally is known as a land of agriculture opportunity. I think we can't say that it's been very successful over the last decades in being a player internationally as a source of food, but nonetheless, it's also quite ecologically preserved. So it raises this dilemma in that while I would like to improve the agriculture activity in Mozambique, I always think of the costs and destruction of agriculture, and Mozambique is still very intact ecologically. So it comes with a dilemma and the sacrifice of how much destruction are we comfortable in having in order to produce food. So that's at the center of my thesis, I suppose.
Great guest today. We are closing. Thank you so much, JIMO Serodio, Sekou Radio.
Thank you, Sekou.
Jimo's going to leave his phone number and his website for people who want to join him and contact him. Jimo, go ahead one more time, your phone number and your website, please.
Yeah, my phone number is 813-770-9616. Our education website is www.justlearn.io. And you can reach out to me by email at DJIMO@justlearn.io.
Thank you so much, listeners, Sekou Radio, and thank you to our guest, JIMO Serodio.